It's been 3,000 years since I've had a new Pokemon to review since completing the dex. Okay, hasn't been that long, but with all of the leaks and speculation lining up, this looks like we could have a possible new Lycanroc form very shortly for Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, and I am really excited about the potential competitive breakdown of this new Pokemon. Now, quick shout out to Tequila on Rice. I commissioned them for this Lycanroc hybrid Twilight Dusk form. I don't know, we don't really know yet, but from what we've seen on the Korokoro, it's like a midday Lycanroc with midnight coloring and maybe a couple of feature changes. So that's just kind of the idea I'm working with when thinking about these stats, or also just the Pokemon itself. That if it's a hybrid between midday and midnight Lycanroc, how are the stats going to reflect it? I think that looking at the stats of this potential Pokemon, it's also a pretty big deal because unfortunately, Midday and Midnight Lycanroc do not get a lot of competitive play. That's mostly based on their stats. That, okay, Midnight Lycanroc makes absolutely no sense. For a Rock-type Pokemon, it has very low durability, good offensive stat, but then not a lot of speed to back it up, and Rock-types generally aren't that fast. On the other side of the coin, we have Midday form. Midday form is a glass cannon that has solid damage and solid speed, but it's slightly lacking, you know? It's not going to find just an instant KO with Stone Edge, and then it can get punished really easily because of its low defenses. Also, that speed is still very exploitable, because a 112 base speed Pokemon doesn't want to use Scarf, but it gets out-Scarfed, and then Greninja comes in, and there's just a lot of things that can also deal with the Midday form. And when you just compare other Pokemon, too, we have Midday form kind of just being like an Aerodactyl light. Aerodactyl has slightly less damage, but when you're at 115 attack versus 105 attack, everything is going to be about a 2-hit KO anyways, so Aerodactyl just has more speed than the Midday Lycanroc, and also just more bulk technically, so Aerodactyl just feels like a better option, and even it doesn't get a lot of play, and it has a freaking Mega Evolution. Looking at some of the other Pokemon like Venusaur, we have starter Pokemon. Venusaur shares the lowest base stat total with a couple other starters, but that's at 525. It crushes the Midday and Midnight forms base stat total, and it's a starter Pokemon. Now, I understand that, like, early game balance could be an issue when it comes to this, that, okay, you look at Rockruff, it's not meant to, like, just evolve into some kind of monster that's going to have you snowball a game and absolutely destroy it. That's generally why we have 3-stage evolutions, that we can start loading some more stats later into the game, and even then, for the starter Pokemon, those are kind of average-ish, if not a little below average, and we don't see every starter Pokemon being used competitively, so being lower than that is definitely going to be a handicap, and could factor into the Pokemon's potential usage or not, than just stat optimization. It's never using that 55 in the special attack, so we, again, just have an okay offensive Pokemon with okay speed or poor defenses in the case of the Midnight form, and you can't really just take a new Lycanroc form and pump defensive stats into it. Just, you know, rip points out of the attack, rip points out of speed, throw it into defenses, because that's pretty much just like every other Rock-type Pokemon, so it won't have much of an identity either. That's kind of where we just raise the question, like, what is this thing going to be? Is it going to be the same base stat total? Since it seems like a hybrid form or a mix between day and night, is it also going to be a Pokemon that just has, like, equally distributed stats, that it averages between midday and midnight Lycanroc forms? Well, that's not really going to give it much of an advantage either, and I feel it's a little unfair if you go, hey, by the way, this new Lycanroc form, it gets like a plus 50 to its base stat total, so now it's viable, but midday and midnight Lycanroc are now obscure forever. So it's really going to come down to potential abilities, moves, and maybe stat optimization when we look at the new Lycanroc form. So yeah, just to kind of give you an idea of what averaging it looks like, an 80 hit point, 70 defense, special defense Pokemon, not that great. Being under 100 base speed, not that great. 115 attack, it's okay, but there's stronger, bulkier, faster offensive Pokemon than just that. So averaging the stats between midday and midnight kind of gives you an idea of how poor the stats end up being optimized. Now, another idea I had, since like a hybrid or a fusion or maybe just a superior form in some kind of way, like what if it's just like superior day, superior night form? Either way, that still doesn't explain the green eyes on Rockruff, so we still have to wait a bit. But overall, what if it just like chooses between the two stats and then picks the best one? Even then, the Pokemon doesn't even look that overpowered. 85 hit points, 75 defense, 115 attack, 112 speed. Fairly balanced, and maybe even just still slightly underwhelming. That's taking the best of the Lycanroc stats and putting them together. So I was wondering, maybe we could just take it a little further, you know, 125 on the attack with a 112 on the speed. With those defenses, that could be good, and we're only at a 527 base stat total. I also ripped like 25 points off special attack, so it looked a little better, but even then, like, worst case scenario, we're still at the stats of a starter Pokemon. and we don't really have too much to show for it, or we have a 502 base stat total if we end up taking out special attack, because it doesn't matter anyways. I'm wondering if that 115 attack might still be consistent across any potential iteration of the Lycanroc. Now let's talk about moves and movesets. Well, Lycanroc is a fairly unique-ish interesting Pokemon because it has the same moveset except for one move change. Accelerock on midday form, which actually, now that I think about it, doesn't really work out. We already have a fast Pokemon getting Accelerock, but it's too frail to get counter. I was wondering like if they were swapped or something, because having a slower Pokemon with high attack getting Accelerock, that could be filthy. That could be really scary to deal with, but at this time, it only stands that we know one Lycanroc form to have it, and it's already kind of a faster one, so the damage is underwhelming. And then we have counter on the midnight form. Well, counter on midnight form, that also doesn't make a lot of sense because it doesn't have an absurd amount of defense like other rock Pokemon, and even then counter isn't like that special a move. So we have Accelerock, a new exclusive move, and then mundane move that doesn't get a lot of usage. Maybe the new form gets Earthquake, but without stab, it's just kind of coverage. Might turn into something, I don't know. You already hit fire type super effective with your rock type stab. I'm not even going to talk about typing. I feel like keeping rock consistent makes the most sense out of this. What about close combat? Just high amounts of base power. Without stab, it does kind of lose its kick, but that means you can just crush into rock and steel type Pokemon and then have higher damage than the Earthquake at the cost of defenses you might not even be utilizing if the speed stat is there to back up this Lycanroc form. And I was even wondering maybe Fissure. I believe, I didn't like triple check it, but after a quick look at all the Oko moves, I believe that a Pokemon, if it has 112 on the base speed, would be the fastest Oko move in the game. So that could just be like a unique gimmick or something that gives Lycanroc an edge to be picked over something else. I'm just going to be like Twilight Lycanroc or Hybrid Lycanroc, whatever we're calling it, and then we can also look at the abilities. So, No Guard on Midnight Lycanroc is really good. Now, obviously, we can't have No Guard and Fissure, but No Guard Stone Edge. That's awesome. That means we have a stab 100 base power move that's hitting pretty dang hard, and then you don't have to worry about it with the No Guard. Does mean that you can get hit by everything, but for the most part, No Guard, if done with the right moveset and done well, it can actually benefit the Pokemon using it more. That also means maybe we could see move tutors, because Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon has move tutors, so about potential move tutors for Lycanroc, Iron Tail. I think that would be a pretty good idea. No Guard, Iron Tail, Lycanroc. That's going to be the steel coverage against fairies. That's going to be Stone Edge hitting really hard. And then maybe some other coverage options to kind of balance it out could lead to something else. And maybe new abilities. I was thinking maybe it could get Solid Rock. That if it does have heightened defenses, well, that means Solid Rock can pretty much guarantee that it's going to survive a super effective hit just enough. Or maybe just be like an all-around 2-hit KO. You know, powerful neutral moves, still a 2-hit KO range. Not super powerful, super effective moves being dampened by the Solid Rock still gets to survive. That way you can use an item for something and still try to find some kind of damage when running the Pokemon. So those are kind of my ideas I have about the new Lycanroc form. Just, Lycanroc is in such a weird situation. Now, what they could do is maybe just buff Lycanroc across the board. I still feel like there's something weird going on in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. All of this is speculation. Maybe I get proven wrong. I've kind of wondered about, like, what the Prism armor on Solgaleo and Lunala means. That with the Solgaleo Lunala forms, what if this is just a buff that could be flat out applied to almost any 7th generation Pokemon? Because they all seemed a little weak. They were either unoptimized moveset wise or they were missing stats. So what happens if you have just a flat plus 15 to everything, or even plus 10 to everything from this Prism Armor or Ultra Power or Ultra Evolution or new Z move modification? We still already have like the weird Z crystal inside the black Z bracelet from the trailer. So there's a lot of pieces. Like, is this going to be just Solgaleo, Lunala, Necrozma legendary stuff? Is this going to tie in with some other Pokemon? Or are there just going to be buffs? We already saw in Pokemon Sun and Moon there was a massive list of buffs and nerfs when it came to kind of balancing the Pokemon. If they do like a mid-generation balance patch, that would be the best thing for Pokemon ever, because we got to see that while on paper a lot of these 7th generation Pokemon looked scary, they ended up not being too scary. I did a couple videos covering this, and like some of the Pokemon that weren't meant to be scary turned out being really scary, like Tapu Koko. Tapu Koko is only utilizing a 95 special attack, but still able to wreck everything because of that electric terrain, and then sets up electric terrain for the field. It prevents sleep, which nerfs sleep further, which means that even like the Vital Spirit on the Midnight Lycanroc loses some viability as well. So I think there's some aspects here that really could come into play that might even be a further modification, or maybe just, you know, Lycanroc at least gets some flat buffs somewhere, you know, plus 10 to everything on both Lycanroc forms, maybe not like speed, because then a 122, 125 Pokemon starts getting a little crazy, even though it's not too ridiculous. So, you know, maybe there is a little bit of balance, and then we can use the new Lycanroc form to maybe hybridize those stats, or also just kind of redistribute it and then make it more optimized. But as it stands right now, we don't see a lot of play out of Midday or Midnight Lycanroc, so having this new form hopefully doesn't overshadow it, but at least gives some viability to a potential new Lycanroc, and if the design looks really cool, or if it really captures the spirit of both of them, then I guess fans won't really be too upset about it. So if you guys enjoy the video, looking at what could go on with the new Lycanroc form, I hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.